All right, we are here today with Stephanie Foster. I want to call you Caceres. That was your student name when I had you as a student at first. Thanks so much for being part of our class.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so you run an apartment complex, and it's where is
Yes.
it located?
So I run an apartment complex 10 minutes from downtown Dallas. It's actually in West Dallas. It's in the new Trinity Groves area. They're doing a whole bunch of construction and bringing up that area. So
Okay.
the property is in that area. It was built in 2018, finished 2019, so it's fairly new.
Okay.
It's 4 stories and 355 units.
Wow. And so dealing with that many tenants, like what is that like?
Well, you definitely have to have obviously a manageable staff. So, depending on how much staff you have as an industry rule, depends on how many units you have. So typically it's per 100. So if
Okay.
you have 100 units, then you can have one person in the office. 200 units, you have, two people in the office. 300, three people, 400, four people. So we have a
Gotcha.
staff of four people in the office. We have
Okay.
two leasing agents, an assistant, and then the property manager, which is what I am.
Gotcha. And what's the address of the property?
It's a 1212 Singleton Boulevard, Dallas, Texas.
Okay, I'm going to pull it up here on maps just so we can have a perspective of where it's at according to like downtown. Let me
Yeah.
pull that up here. My friend, interesting enough, he owns a printing company right in this area too. So
Really?
yeah, so right over there, Matt Ramsey works in that area too. So you're just and what kind of clientele would you say that you have being so close to downtown Dallas? What kind of clientele is that?
Well, so it's an interesting mix. So because it's coming up, it's an up and coming, area, and it's a luxury property, so the rents there are fairly high. I have a lot of business owners. I have, some people who like own a restaurant in downtown. I
Okay.
have lawyers, doctors, real estate agents, people who basically can afford to live in that luxury building.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so you and so are you more on the service of the customer or the service of the renter side, or are you more on like trying to lease new apartments to people? Are you on the sales side?
So it's a little bit of both. Like, so when I started off in the industry, I was a leasing agent, which is all sales. So you have to get them in the door and you have to lease the units. And then you obviously move up, however that goes.
Yeah.
So I have to do, when you're a manager, you have to wear different hats. So I have to do the customer service side. And then if my leasing agent is out or out on lunch and someone comes in, then I have to do the sales side because obviously we want to keep, you know, people coming in the door and we want to keep our occupancy up. So if
Yeah.
someone walks in, I'm not going to say, oh, she's at lunch, can you come back later? No,
Right.
I'm going to say, hi, how can I help you? Are you interested in a one bedroom or two bedroom? How soon are you looking to move?
Yeah.
What amenities are you interested in? Things of that nature.
Are you on like some kind of commission basis or something? Or like how do they incentivize you to be like, because I know in some apartment complexes where I lived back in the past, the staff was motivated or unmotivated. How do they keep you motivated?
Well, it's that's a great question because it really depends on the leadership. So, um, I have always followed the golden rule: treat people how you want to be treated.
Yeah.
And for the most part, for me, wherever I've gone, staff has followed and they've gone with me
Good.
because it's more opportunity, maybe more pay. But typically, the management company that you work for sets up the tier. So, like, for example, at this property, the commissions are $100. So every person that comes into lease, you get $100 for that lease plus your hourly pay, whatever that
Wow.
is. So
Okay.
for commission bonuses, if you make 10 leases in 1 month, then you get $1,000 bonus that month.
But does it but what if the person doesn't quite qualify for the requirements and you're just trying to get that bonus?
Yeah. So if they don't qualify, then obviously you don't get the bonus because they have to move in and be a resident.
Okay.
But for the most part, we have a rental criteria. It's posted on our website and it lets you know the qualifications that we require. So like for my property, you have to make 2.5 times the rent and
Okay.
it's based off your credit. So if you have anything like uh anything that would like deter you, like for example, I had one person who had their car got repoed. So that disqualified them from getting the apartment. So we look
Okay.
at different factors, and the management company um sets that up
What is
on
the
how they want
website?
it.
What is the website, Stephanie?
So it's the Austin at Trinity Green, or live at the
Austin
Austin.
at Trinity Greens. Okay. I'm gonna
Yeah,
try to look at,
Dallas.
oops, Austin at Trinity Greens. Okay, there it is.
Yeah,
The Austin.
yeah,
Cool. What a cool name. The
yeah.
Austin.
I
So
know, and it's in
very,
Dallas, right? Everybody says, really, the Austin in Dallas? Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's very hip though. I mean, like, wow, look at
Yeah,
this place. Okay, so you manage, so you're the manager here. Okay. And so you've
yeah,
got and so we're looking over here, we've got kind of if they want to apply and all the kind of things
yeah,
that they would require. And so they would go through this process. So they would have to qualify. You would have to be like they meet all the criteria, and then if they do and they lease, then you get the $100. Now if you're more on the service side of it and not on the sales side of it, do you not get commission then on stuff that like if another person, if they come in the door and your teammate gets them in the front door, do they get the commission, or how does that work?
yeah. So the leasing agents, they pretty much get the commission. The manager, we get commissions. Again, it's based on the management company and what the owners have set up. So like,
Okay.
I'm very fortunate because this company that I work for, the managers get what's called a quarterly bonus. So
Okay.
if you meet your goals and you're within budget, and you're meeting your NOI, which is your net operating income, if you're beating that, and you're in your sections,
Okay.
then you get I get a fairly substantial bonus
Okay.
every quarter. Yeah.
Cool. Interesting. So you really, the section we're looking at within my class is like a lot of, we're looking at real estate investing. And so like,
Hmm.
how do you determine a good tenant and a bad tenant? Has there been any tenants in your mind over your years of doing this that really like stood out as like, I mean, I've had a few in my rental properties where I'm like, oh my gosh, like anything that
Yeah.
you come across?
Yeah. Well, it really just depends, honestly, because I've worked at rough properties. When I say rough, but in the industry we classify them as A, B, C, D properties. Okay,
Okay.
so your D properties are going to be like your Section 8 or HUD properties. Your C properties are going to be your C and B are going to be like your middle class properties, and then you have your A properties, which is the luxury properties.
Right.
So I've had different types of tenants, different types of everything, but really you have to understand that at the end of the day, we don't get paid if we don't have tenants, right? Like, they're
Right.
the reason we exist.
Yeah.
So right, wrong, or otherwise, we try to try to make them happy. You have some tenants though that just complain about every little thing, and like literally everything. Like, I had one tenant ask me if I could change the schedule when the landscapers come because it disturbs her when she's sleeping. And
Right.
I had to tell her, I'm sorry, but I can't change their schedule. They're our vendor. We're on actually on their schedule because they
Yeah.
come and they service us. So things like that. I mean, I had a tenant who let their 2-year-old put wipies down the toilet, and tried to deny that anything happened. When the
Right.
maintenance took off the toilet, we were like, okay, well, we're gonna have to charge you for that, and they were unhappy about it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you really get tenants. It really just depends, honestly, on the person, because I've had tenants in luxury, completely, belittle and try to treat you like crap. And then I have tenants on the CD side who are just so loving and thankful, and
Yeah.
so it really honestly just depends
You ever have
on the
tenants that are
person.
like, do you ever have tenants that are like that just hate each other? Like maybe
Yes.
one guy smokes and the one guy's a dog or whatever. Like, do you have to get in the middle of all of that?
Yes, I do. So, yes. So, You have to go by the lease contract, obviously. So we follow the TAA lease, which is the Texas Apartment Association lease. So we pay for that, and we follow that lease. So that's the lease that the residents sign, and it clearly states in the lease, that there's a community curfew. So basically, it's like quiet time, right? Like after 10 o'clock, turn your radio down, be courteous of your neighbors,
Yeah.
things like that. So we have some neighbors who, let's say, their kids are running, they're on the second floor, and we might have a single person on the first floor, because we
Right.
can't, we can't steer, because that's fair housing. So wherever your apartment is where your apartment is. So we may have tenants who their kids are running on their second floor, and then we have a single woman on the first floor, and she takes her broom and she's hitting the ceiling with it, and she's like,
Right.
"I need you to be quiet." So the other one will retaliate and stomp on the floor. You can't do that.
Okay. Right.
So yeah, so typically what we tell the residents is, if you have an issue, come in, tell me about it, talk to me, then I will go and be the mediator, and I will talk to the resident and let them know the concerns, and
Yeah.
then say, hey, could you keep it down? We have quiet hours. If you're doing this or the other, then I'll have to issue you like a lease violation.
Yeah.
And so that's where the contract comes in hand, because typically with a TAA lease contract, if the resident gets 3 lease violations or more, you can evict them.
Well, in our class, we're looking at, investing in a rental property. And
Hmm.
so I think having your perspective is an interesting one, because one of the things that an investor has to be able to figure out is what's going to be a good tenant and what's not going to be a good tenant. I currently have a property management company who runs my properties for me now, which is wonderful, because I do not like dealing with tenants. I feel for you, because that can be it can be a difficult experience. But for the new
Yeah.
investor, they just don't have the capital to do so. So this is going to be our case study in our class. This is Desmond. He's very excited. He just bought his first apartment. He bought his first house, rental property, and he just doesn't know what should be the most important thing. And one of the things that the class is going to have to figure out is they're going to actually debate. And Stephanie, I love debate. And in my
Yeah.
class, the teams are going to have to pick which of these things they think is the most important thing that Desmond should focus on when he is considering for what should be the most important thing he considers with a new tenant. So we look at these different things here. How important is it in your, especially in your game, with what you guys are doing there? Is credit score everything?
So credit score is a high factor, but things happen, especially with COVID and people losing their jobs. Some people lost their homes.
Yeah.
Um, Before COVID, credit was absolutely everything.
Yeah.
After credit, we realize that we have to make, adjustments. So credit really isn't, I want to say credit is like number two.
Okay.
The most important is prior rental history,
Okay.
because that's how you're going to find out if you have a problem resident.
Okay.
You want to do rental history. You need to do rental history. It's a requirement. You have to have rental history. Um, and people are smart these days. I mean, you'd be surprised how much fraud we get coming in, and we have to like literally, Google the address or do a better business bureau search to make sure that they actually lived at this place. Who can we get in contact with to do a rental history?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have residents, and it happens a lot in the industry. Sometimes you have residents who can't afford their rent, so they're going to skip out and go to the next apartment complex that's having a move-in special. Oh,
Right.
some properties, like if it's a lease up property, so a lease up property is a property that was just built and it's vacant, so you got to lease it up to get your occupancy. So
Yeah.
like some lease up properties will offer like a 2 months free move-in special if you apply today and things like that. So you have to be careful on who you're renting to.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing is like, I think for me, with rentals in the past, I had people who would give me all sorts of different sob stories about, why their credit was what it was or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so like, I had one time literally had someone tell me this, where they said like I had a medical bankruptcy and my credit score, they were dealing with cancer or something. It was something like that. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, is do you consider like things like this as a part of their credit score, or would you say, man, I'm sorry, your credit score is what it is?
No, it's honestly straight business, straight numbers. I mean, you either qualify or you don't, and the management company sets the so the management company would get with the owner and the investors and set the criteria that they want for their property. So
Yeah,
if the investors and the owners are like, no, we don't want anybody with a credit score below this, then when you get the software, they set up the parameters how they want it. So
yeah,
automatically, if they apply and they have less than a 600 credit score, well, would you use that as an example? They're automatically denied.
okay,
And that's just what it is. So we try to keep the this sounds really bad, but like the emotion out of the application,
right,
because I mean, you're managing an asset. Your main goal obviously is customer service, but you're hired to do a job for the owner. Your main job is to make money for the owner. And
right.
so if they don't qualify, they just don't qualify.
But and that's easy, and that's easy in your sense, just because you can say like, well, there are these people who are the investors, and I have to. But as me, if I'm the owner of the rental property, and you're
Mhm.
coming and pleading to me, it's so difficult. You hear these stories of all these different things. So let's look here. A solid rental history. So and by the way, Desmond is probably going to be dealing with this small little house right here. It's a brand
Yeah.
new kind of starter house. So it might be that he gets people coming in who have no rental history. They're 23 years old, they've been at college, and now they've lived at their parents' basement, and now they're trying to get their first place. Is solid rental history really everything to Desmond?
So, there is first time renters. Okay. So with first time renters, typically, so you use the example 23-year-old out of college. Okay. So
Right.
typically with the first time renter, because they've never rented before, typically you will always charge a higher deposit
Okay.
because given the history of turnovers with first time renters,
Yeah.
they typically either skip out or they completely wreck the unit because they're young and they don't know and they just like,
Really?
oh, yes,
Oh, that's
yes.
so bad. That's so hard to hear that.
Yeah. So oh gosh, I like honestly like, so there's a whole different part of rental. There's like a student housing part of it, like for like the college towns.
Right.
I personally, just me, would not work at a student housing property because you have so many conflicts with roommates.
Oh,
One skips out, one doesn't pay the rent. I mean, it's a lot with
right.
student housing. So I personally wouldn't work there, but I mean, there's other people who love it and do it. But
Right.
yeah, so based on this scenario, I mean, yeah, if they're a first time renter, you want to give them that chance, but you also know what kind of chance you're taking, because you don't know how responsible they are. So you would charge a higher deposit.
Well, I know how I was when I was a college student, and I wasn't very responsible. So I certainly understand, like, you know, I get it. And like, I feel for those people, but then again, you gotta like somebody has to rent to a first time renter. Like they can't just never get their first property, right? So
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. And it just depends on what tier you're on. So like if you're an individual owner and you're meeting these people face to face, then yeah, you're going to have more of a one-on-one with your prospect. But if you're, an investor and you have like a third party management company, like you have a management company, you don't deal with the renters.
right.
So it really just depends on what level, you're renting on.
Okay. So but I would think the amount of money they make is a far bigger criteria, wouldn't it? That as to the ability to pay rent?
Yes. So it's all really a solid medium line because you have to make the money.
Yeah.
So for sure, if you make the money, your credit, but your rental, I mean, if there's some people who just don't take care of the apartment complex, you don't want them in there, even if they do make the money.
Okay.
Because
Yes.
you have to consider turnover costs, right? How long they're going to stay in the unit. What's it going to cost you to turn the unit once they move out? I mean, there's so many different factors that go
Is
into
there
that.
is there any correlation to high income and high taking care of a property?
Yes. So like at our luxury complex, I have a resort style pool that we have to manage year round. It has to stay looking good. Number one, well, Texas weather is crazy, so you can go swimming, even when
Yeah.
when it's sunny outside. And then we have like the stainless steel appliances, and we just have more higher quality items compared to other apartment
Yeah.
complexes.
Right. So you're gonna want so would Desmond be like, man, I'm a little more concerned about the fact that this person makes 250,000 a year than I am about he just doesn't have any rental history. What with this little house here, what should he be considering?
Well, typically someone okay, so what kind of area is it in?
I don't know. I don't think I placed an area on it. Like we can just judge
Okay.
it based off this picture, which I stole off Google Images. This random
Yeah.
guy who looks like he's very excited about his new rental property. I mean, let's say it's Dallas. Let's say it's Dallas somewhere. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if it really honestly just depends on the area, the type of clientele that you're going to get for the area, it really, just depends where you're at. But I mean, if you're a first time if you're a first time owner of a rental property, I would take into consideration how much money they make and their rental history.
Okay. So, but what about a criminal history check? I mean, you could have the guy from Breaking Bad, who makes millions of dollars living in your place, but he's selling drugs. That's got to weigh in as a big factor as well as like passing a criminal history check.
Yeah, so so there are criminal checks that you have to pass, and again, it's set on the management company. So, like for example, ours, like you cannot have any felonies.
Okay.
A felony is an automatic denial. You can't have any like aggravated assault charges, any sexual charges. So
Isn't that
the criminal.
discriminatory though? Isn't that somewhat discriminatory? Like the person went to jail, they served their time, they did their thing,
Mhm.
and don't they get to move on with life?
Well, I think it really depends on the. I think it goes based on the type of property and the type of loan that the owners get.
Okay.
Like I said, there's so much that goes into it. So like, if they're like a HUD property based on their qualifications, like the government tells them, you have to accept these types of backgrounds,
Right.
things like that.
Okay.
But for the most part, the investors and the owners set their standards, and as long as they're straight across the board, then they're not violating any fair housing. Which is why when someone comes in to apply, you treat them all the same.
So like let's say this person right here, this scenario, which I love scenarios that make you into limbo positions, right? Let's say Desmond says, I'm not going to take anybody with a felony, but this person comes in and says, I was 18 years old. I just dropped off my friend at home, and my friend left their bag in my car, and I got pulled over, and the bag had drugs in it. I pleaded a felony to get out of jail time. This was 11 years ago. I have a felony on my record, but this is what happened. Does
Mhm.
Desmond weigh that in, or does he say felony no go?
Well, so Desmond is an individual owner, so he can make the decision if he wants to accept that person with a felony or not. But then he also has to take into consideration that if someone else comes down the road 3 years later and he had a horrible experience with this person who had a felony, he can now not tell this person, "Oh,
Oh,
I can't rent you because you have a felony."
right,
So that's what I'm saying. You have to treat everyone, the same. If and there's special circumstances, like if you have a fourplex, there's like rules and regulations that you don't have to follow these federal guidelines. Like, you don't have to allow pets in the duplex, but if you have like four or more, then you have, it just depends. So I mean,
right,
there's a lot of laws that go into the type of establishment you're renting.
right. But it's simple. Like for you, it's fairly simple because it's black and white. Felony no go, no felony, they're okay. Whereas
Mhm.
Desmond is going to be like in this gray area where he has to sort of like assess every tenant that comes to the door. Okay,
Yeah.
smoking. Should Desmond, is this something that ought to be high on Desmond's list where he says no smoking in any circumstances in the property?
Yeah. Well, it's private property. And they're renting it. So it's not theirs. So if there's a no smoking, then you don't smoke. Our property is a no smoking property as well. It's private property. And you sign a lease that you are not going to be smoking anywhere inside or outside of the unit.
Wow, even on the balcony?
Yeah. It's a
Can they
no
like,
smoking property.
can they walk out to like the sidewalk? I guess that would be public property and then
Yeah.
smoke there and then walk back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there
Because
a
if you're
group of
smoking
people
on
to
your
do that?
balcony, I mean, because if you're smoking on your balcony, the smoke's gonna travel to your neighbor, and then your
Right.
neighbor's gonna call and say, "Oh, hey, so and so is smoking."
Yeah. Do
I
you have
mean,
people, do you have people who live there and walk out to the sidewalk, smoke, and then walk back?
of course not. They're gonna smoke whenever they want to. They're gonna break the rules. But
Yeah.
if we catch them, then we remind them, "Hey, this is a smoke-free property." Like, I had someone. So our units are, they're 4 stories. So they wrap around. In order to get to the apartment, you take the elevator and you go around the building, right?
Right.
So I had someone who was smoking an illegal substance, and you could smell it down the hallway.
Yes.
So it was hard to figure out who exactly was smoking it. So in instances like that, we, sent out a mass text message reminding all the tenants that we were a smoke-free property. And if you know who is in violation, to report them to the office.
Right. And that's got to be helpful because I don't want to smell that. And so if I'm living next door to that person, I'm going to be like, it's that guy right there and he's driving me crazy. And you're going to be on
Yeah,
his door like, hey, I don't know what you're doing in here, but can't do that. Right.
yeah.
Okay. So what about pets? Should Desmond be, I mean, look at this cute little golden retriever puppy. I mean, how could you deny this beautiful little creature that God has given us here? Like, how in the world, I mean, should Desmond be fearful of pets?
Oh man. Let me tell you, pets, especially pets that are not trained, destroy. They
Yes.
destroy the property. Um,
Even this cute little guy
I
right here. I mean, come on.
Yes, yes, he costs properties tons of money. That cute little dog right there. Um, I would suggest, definitely, like I said, it's up to the owner if he wants to accept pets or not. But if you accept a pet, we require a $500 pet deposit, and we residents have to pay rent for their pet. So
Wow.
it's a $500 pet deposit, and then it's a $20 a month pet fee,
Okay.
and then you have to have renter's insurance in your unit, to cover any damages that may happen. And we do that because there's tenants who just let the pets completely destroy,
Right.
the apartment. And when the pets, when they pee or poop on the carpet, it's hard to get that out. And then you have to clean it. And sometimes when you clean it, the smell doesn't come out. So you have to pick
Oh.
up the carpet and the pad, and you have to do a seal on the concrete because it leaks down to the concrete.
Oh.
Yeah. So then if that doesn't work, you have to take out the carpet and pad and replace it new. So
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, is it also a nuisance? Like let's say I rent my apartment and I'm on the first floor and the second floor is quiet and wonderful, and then you rent the second floor to a person with a dog, and now that change, like now the dog is crazy and loud and all hours of the night it's running around. Like, do I on the first floor have a right to say I don't like this dog above me?
Yeah, so that goes back to the community policies and rules. Your dog has to be a well-behaved dog, and if he's causing a disturbance, then you're going to get a lease violation. And it states it in the contract on the pet addendum. We have addendums for everything.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. All right. Okay. So let's look here. Too many occupants. And I've had this happen to my properties where I have had a tenant move in and they've named all the people on the property, and then all of a sudden there's like a new car in their driveway, and it's there every day, and I'm like, whose car is that? And they're like, oh, that's Larry, he's just staying here for a couple weeks or whatever. Like, do you have is that something Desmond should be worried about too, in that he is worried about having too many people living in this little house?
Yeah. So we have on the contract, it states that if you have a visitor, they cannot stay in the apartment with you for more than 3 days. If they are
Okay.
there after more than 3 days, then you have to come to the office, fill out an application, and put them on the lease contract.
Wow.
Because if you move someone in, and especially with Texas having, common law marriage,
Yeah.
if you move someone in with to your apartment and they're not on the lease, and let's say there's a domestic violence issue going on,
Yeah.
and as an example, and then the police show up, because that person has his or her belongings in that apartment, technically it's their apartment.
Wow.
So now you risk us evicting you
Yeah.
because you're in violation of your lease contract.
How do you know that? How
And
do you know
so,
if they've been there 3 days? Are you like by their door as they walk in and you're like, click one night, click 2 nights? Like, how do you know that?
well, no, but typically when you work at, when you're at your property, you get to know your tenants fairly well.
Yeah.
And so, and especially maintenance, because, maintenance are your eyes and ears, because they're outside, they're inside, and so they'll be the ones to say, hey, that person moved in, or I saw them moving in clothes, or this, that, or the other. So you typically know, who's in violation. Or, sometimes the person who's not on the lease will try to come down and put in a work order for the unit. And it's like, oh, you're not on the lease. Are you living there? Oh,
Right.
yeah, that's my boyfriend or girlfriend. Oh, okay, thank you. Sure. Well, I'm like, I can't put in the work order because you're not on the contract. But if you want to have so and so contact me, I can put in the work order for them. So they contacted me, and I'm like, okay, we'll take care of your work order. Oh, and by the way, you're in violation of your lease contract. Do
Yeah.
you want to put that person on your lease? If so, we need to get that done today, or you're going to get a lease violation.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Well, Stephanie, this has been really, really interesting. I mean, this is such great perspective, because I know that all my students who are going to own rental properties, they're going to cross the bridge of having to get the right tenant.